Several members of the Chat Sports staff are at Radio Row this week for the Super Bowl, and they interviewed Daryl Johnston, the former Cowboys fullback, former Fox Sports exec, a key figure with the UFL. Long-ranging conversation with my boy Jack Sperry and Daryl Johnston. Before we throw to that, show him some love by typing 48 in the comment section of today's show.
Welcome into NFL Daily. Our coverage of Super Bowl 59 here from Radio Row in New Orleans continues, and I am joined here by Cowboys legend, Super Bowl champion, and Executive Vice President of Football Operations for the United Football League. Did I get all that there, Daryl?
Yeah.
Daryl Johnston is joining us here on NFL Daily. Daryl, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Look forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So let's start a little bit with the UFL. It's a spring football league here, and I think that you guys have had a lot of success here over the last several years, and now you guys are just opening a new facility in Arlington.
Yeah.
Just tell me a little bit about the success of the league over the last several years, and just plug that league a little bit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sitting in the atrium, last Wednesday and reflecting back on where we were when we started our journey in Legacy USFL in 2022, and Russ Brandon, our president and CEO, at the other side of the dais, and where they were, starting off in Legacy XFL 2023, to be sitting in that building and just what a journey it's been to get to that point. Going back to our first year, we're in a shuttered hotel from the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
I think we're not only are we the first tenants back in, but we're kind of the guinea pig tenant coming back in. Is it still functional? Is it still safe? The challenge that we have with our players, propping that league up and getting it running in year one was really challenging. And you had to be a bit of a salesman when you talk to players and agents to kind of convince them to come your way, because the Alliance of American Football had failed in 2019. The XFL had failed in 2020 in the first iteration. The Spring League was still there, and that's really kind of what transformed into the USFL. But trying to get that propped up to the standard that we knew Fox was going to hold us to was challenging. And then listening to Russ talk about some of the stuff that they had happen in XFL, the big snowstorm in Dallas, right in the middle of training camp as they were getting underway, and the impact that had. So here we are sitting in this beautiful building, 110,000 square feet plus. It's going to house our 8 teams, our training staffs, our video department. We'll have some other areas over in Choctaw Casino or Choctaw Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
So just it's amazing. And the opportunity we've provided, if you go back and go into the legacy leagues prior to the merger and then take the merger year, so the last 2 years, we've got 38 guys in the NFL on 53s.
Yeah.
So, that's awesome. Some of the big names that have come out of our spring platform before the UFL, Brandon Aubrey and Cavante Turpin for Dallas, Dan Whelan for, Green Bay, came out of the XFL. And then last year, we had a really cool thing. Obviously, Jake Bates in Detroit, and the way that came to all came together. But we had Jalen Redmond, a defensive tackle that went to Minnesota, became the starter in December. So that kind of eased the concerns that some of the players express about, well, we're going to play 10 weeks, potentially 12 weeks with you for in the championship game, and then we got to roll right into an NFL training camp. Then we got to roll right into an NFL season, 18 weeks, 17 games. Is the body going to hold up to that? And to watch Jalen, earn that starting role, in the month of December, week 14, was just amazing. And then Dondre Tillman, playing a defensive end for the Denver Broncos. So we're getting outside of just the kicking game and the return guys and kind of moving into the core of what football is about, down in the trenches with the defensive side. So our big thing now is, how do we get our offensive linemen the same opportunity that Jalen and Dondre were able to capitalize on last season? So just, the impact we've had on the guys, the growth that we've had in the both leagues, what the merger set us up to do. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's more of a 1 + 1 = 4. We feel that we really became a much stronger league on all fronts. We added to our personnel. So it was just a great day. I mean, you're sitting there and you're just kind of thinking back about, did you really think you would be in this type of venue 4 years ago when you started this thing? And like, absolutely not.
Absolutely. So that's phenomenal what you guys have been able to do. I want to talk a little bit here about Emmitt Smith because I heard you and Emmitt got to connect a little bit here on Radio Row earlier today. Just talk about your relationship with him and some of those years in the backfield there with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, it's been great. It's kind of funny because I knew about Emmitt when I was at Syracuse University. He was on the cover of USA Today Sports a couple of times. Just looking at the numbers and just what he had accomplished through his high school career, down at Escambia, it was amazing. And then kind of, tracking him, into Florida and watching his career there. And then, all the way up in Syracuse, you're kind of keeping your eye on this guy that's caught your attention. And then I get drafted to Dallas in 1989. Emmitt comes in 1990. And it's kind of weird, that a guy up in Syracuse, New York is kind of like, hey, this is interesting. This guy's doing some amazing stuff down in Florida. And then, watching him go on to his college career. And then we end up being in the backfield together. So it's kind of like there's always been this kind of destiny for us to have been brought together. And then once we were paired up in the backfield, it was awesome kind of being with him. And, we would sit like this in the team meeting rooms as we're watching film. And I tried to learn from him. He tried to learn from me. And, where can we get better as a tandem, playing out of the same backfield. And, I showed him, how I study and kind of bring things together that maybe the coaches didn't group together, but they made sense to me being, put together because they were very, very similar in the rules. And for him, it's kind of the worst thing I could have done because I was the third down back because I understood the protections a little bit better at that time. They were complicated. And then I showed Emmitt how to do it and then, picks it up like that. And then, there goes my third down. My third down package is out the window. So it was a blast. I mean, I have the utmost respect for him, and not only as a football player, but, just as a man. He's been a great guy. He's been great in my life, and our families getting to know each other, and just awesome to be able to pick up the phone and check in with a guy like Emmitt Smith is surreal sometimes.
So the fullback position is a position that's less utilized in the National Football League today, but there are some teams, the San Francisco 49ers, the Miami Dolphins, that use fullbacks with a lot of success. Do you think or what advantages would you say gives an offense to have a fullback and have two back sets?
Yeah, I think that those are two good teams. So you go to Kyle Juszczyk out in San Francisco and how Kyle Shanahan uses them. And that was when Kyle got to San Francisco, Kyle Juszczyk was one of the guys that he first brought in because he really felt that he was going to play a critical role in the offense that he was going to construct out there. You talk about Alec Ingold down in Miami, a little bit different than Kyle Juszczyk. And I'll throw one more out for you, Patrick Ricard in Baltimore, who I really like, is a converted guy into the fullback position. I think he's done it kind of seamlessly. He's a bigger body, but very athletic. When Baltimore wants to get downhill on you and they got a guy that's pushing 300 pounds, coming out of the backfield, but has that athleticism is pretty impressive. So the teams that use them really well, but they all use them differently. And I think that's the unique thing about the fullback position. And if you go back into history and try and compare guys, what guy are we looking at? Because you had, Mike Allstott, who I really call, more of a three quarterback because he's in between a halfback and a fullback. He's that,
excuse you.
Thank you. He's that unique guy that can play, both of those positions. More like Larry Centers, who's, playing the fullback spot, but it's more like that third down back mentality and just a ton of receptions. Tom Rathman, in the split formations, being a guy that had over 90 catches during the course of the year. Is it going to be more similar, to somebody like, me and Lorenzo Neal and, Howard Griffith out in Denver and Tony Richardson up in Kansas City? It's so different in how varied, this one position is utilized in all these different offenses. So it's always been challenging, when people talk about, how do you classify the position and what the requirements are. It really is based on what kind of offense you want to run and then what skill sets you're looking for. So I think the big thing today for me is the defensive tackles that are inside were not part of the game when I played. I mean, these freakish guys that are 6'5", 315 pounds and can move quick and can run you down in a 10 to 12 yard space. And they can beat an offensive lineman quick. And so to have that fullback in the backfield where the running back doesn't have to make somebody miss on the negative side of the line of scrimmage, you've got that fullback that can absorb him. And it happened to us a couple of times because teams started to stunt against us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the things that we actually created a couple of plays that were like whams. But it was unintentional because the offensive lineman would step, the defensive tackle would be on a stunt, and if he missed, he knew just go up to the linebacker because I'm on second level on this one. So you go to second level, I've got the first level for you. So we were able to create a couple of plays that took people out of stunts because we were able to gash them pretty good on the inside. And you can't do that without somebody that's there as that first line of protection for the running back. So I just think the way the game is today with the athleticism and the quickness of some of these interior defensive linemen, to have that one extra layer of protection before that running back has to make that move to avoid the tackle, he's got a fullback that he can absorb that free unblocked guy.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the running back position here, because I think with the emergence of Saquon Barkley as inarguably the most valuable player on that Eagles team this year, Derrick Henry with the success that he had with the Ravens this year, Josh Jacobs as a free agent in Green Bay, I think that those three guys really established the running back position as one that's going to garner a lot more value on the free agency market in terms of contract extensions. I think Saquon proved this year that, you can be a running back in today's league and still carry an NFL offense. So do you think that in the future we could see running backs get up to $20 million per season? Saquon this year's just $12.5 million against the cap, which is crazy to think about. But I think that the emergence of those three guys has really helped that position. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's crazy. What about 2 years ago it was very, very undervalued, maybe devalued as a position because we were starting to go to a running back by committee approach because we really didn't have the bell cow back at that time. We thought Derrick was on the downside of a career. We thought Saquon was struggling to stay healthy. And what teams were doing was moving towards a more running back by committee approach. The running backs were not getting that second contract. So it's been a dramatic shift. I mean, when you get a group of running backs that have to come together on a Zoom call and start talking about the state of the union of the running back position across the NFL, that's a different place than we are right now. And I think it shows you the value of the position when it's utilized the right way. When you have a really good offensive line, like both of those teams do, whether it's Baltimore or Philadelphia, and then when you get into Baltimore and you put a Derrick Henry and a Lamar Jackson together, and you can stress a defense by, strong side, weak side, what are you going to protect? Are you going to take the running back? Are you going to hurt you with the quarterback run game? And then with Saquon, just what Jeff Stoutland's able to do with that offensive line and create some of the running lanes. And there's times when Saquon's not getting hit till he's 8-10 yards downfield. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, but that's not going to happen in New York, right? That offensive line is not at that caliber. Philadelphia was a perfect opportunity for Saquon. He maximized that. Derrick Henry was a perfect fit into Baltimore, and they maximized that. And I tell you what, Josh Jacobs he is fun to watch. We had Green Bay a couple of times this year, and he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I'm hoping we get a healthy Nick Chubb next year because he was another guy that I really, really liked. I think we're starting to have a little bit of a resurgence, but it's got to be done the right way. It's exactly what we just talked about with the fullback position and how does that fit into your offense. It's not just Saquon that makes the run game special in Philadelphia. It's those five guys up front along with Saquon. It was our five offensive linemen in Dallas paired with Emmitt Smith that allowed the opportunity for us to have the NFL's all-time leading rushers. So it's great when things come together and then teams have to take advantage of that and maximize it the best they can. So I'm interested to see Josh Jacobs would probably be the one. I'm interested to see how Green Bay in year two there, starts to push that envelope a little bit more the way that they were able to do in Baltimore with Derrick is a great fit and Philadelphia with Saquon is a great fit.
We're sitting here on Radio Row here in New Orleans, and obviously nowadays the Super Bowl has all this fanfare. You have a full week of preparation for this big game. Not quite as much fanfare as when you were playing. How would you have felt about playing in an era like this where there is just so much media attention surrounding not only the National Football League in every game that you play, but especially the biggest games on the stage? Would you embrace it, or would you kind of, would you not like it quite as much?
Yeah, I think Jimmy was so good at controlling what we could control when we went to our first Super Bowl and keeping our schedule as close to normal as we possibly could and what we would have done back in Dallas. I don't know if you can do that anymore. I mean, it's amazing. We're staying at the Chiefs Hotel, and you can see the media coming in because they're going to have media availability at 8 a.m. and then you're trying to get to your meetings, get to your practice. So balancing everything together is even more challenging today than it was back when we were there, and I thought it was difficult back then.
Yeah.
It's just there's so many different platforms of media that are here compared to when we were doing the Super Bowls back in the 90s. So, I don't know how they strike that balance. It's very impressive, and I think it's great for the game. The coverage is great. Some of the people that you've been able to talk to here, everybody is passionate about the game of football and not just watching it, but supporting it and helping it grow. So it's been really, really fun. All the interviews that we've done, everybody is kind of aligned on what their purpose is here, and it's just to celebrate the season. The two teams that I think everybody is excited to have in the Super Bowl. I think it's one of the best matchups, and I think we got two teams really coming off their best performance in the championship games in both conferences. So I think this is going to be a phenomenal game on Sunday.
Yeah, I completely agree. So let's talk about that game a little bit. I personally think the X factor for this one is how well does Saquon Barkley and that Eagles running game do? Because I think Jalen Hurts, when you put him up against the Steve Spagnuolo defense, likes to switch up the looks, all these different things, all the crazy blitzes. They got Josh Allen with that crazy cat corner blitz on 4th and 2 in the AFC Championship game. I mean, Steve throws a lot of stuff at quarterbacks, and sometimes Jalen can take a little bit to understand some of these rotations that defensive coordinators throw at him. So I think it's going to be very important to keep Jalen's plate kind of clean by getting that run game going. And if they don't do that, I think, Mahomes and the Chiefs, especially if the game's close at the end, they do what they do. I think it's a very intriguing matchup. Like you said, it's two kind of Goliaths coming together here in New Orleans. What's kind of your thoughts about this game? And then what's your score prediction for the final in this one?
I think the big thing when you talk about Jalen Hurts, if Kansas City is able to shut down that run game, and the game is going to tilt now onto what Jalen does, and with Devondre Smith and A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert, for that to be successful, and you talk about the pressure that Steve brings, and what Steve does is he flushes you out, and he flushes you to someone, and you can see that Jalen, when he escapes, he always wants to escape out the back and then move to his right.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch the really effective quarterbacks under pressure, you kind of see them challenge the rush that's coming towards them, and they climb that pocket, whether it's a Joe Burrow, even a Patrick Mahomes. They're always moving up. When you go out the back, it really limits what you're going to be able to do. So I think the big thing is if that's the first domino to tip, and that Eagles run game is not controlling the line of scrimmage and not being able to be productive, and we've got to slide towards the passing game, can Jalen Hurts consistently recognize that pressure and then find those escape lanes moving forward? If not, I think it's going to be a tough day for him. I thought he looked as healthy as he has towards the tail end of the season against Washington, so that's something that it should be good for Eagles fans. But if all of a sudden he starts bailing out the back end of the pocket and kind of moving to his right, it's going to be a long day for him. And you don't want to be in that ad-lib scenario where you're just trying to extend the play and be creative on that second play of the game. So I think that would be something that we'll have to keep our eye on as that game starts. The other thing is, with Patrick Mahomes and the way that Vic Fangio plays his defense, it's kind of eyes on the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think the way that Patrick really just breaks the hearts of defenses and frustrates them is he doesn't scramble a lot, and it's not usually for big yards, but they're all critical.
Yeah.
It's on. You finally gotten Kansas City into a 3rd and 11 or a 3rd and 9, and there goes Patrick Mahomes on a 10-yard run or a 12-yard run to convert it, and you can just see like the guys walking back to the huddle on the defensive side of the ball, and it just so frustrated, and so he just demoralizes you when he does that. And the big question is with that Vic Fangio style and eyes on the quarterback, does that help this team? And a lot of people are going to throw out a stat. I think I heard Patrick Mahomes is 8-0 against Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator.
Wow.
Which was surprising for me to hear.
That's surprising to me.
Is the personnel as good as the personnel that he has in Philadelphia right now? I would assume that some of those could have been maybe early days in Denver when they had a really good, that no-fly zone defense was there. But that would be the question for me. It was a surprising stat for me to hear. But I just think that Philly is really, really strong on the back end. 2 years ago when they played, it was really driven by the front.
Yeah.
The front was going to get sacks and get pressure and force the ball to come out quicker. I think here there's the ability to cover, and allow that pass rush to get home, but it doesn't have to get home immediately. And maybe does Patrick feel a little bit more comfort where he's not on the move immediately and he's sitting in the pocket and then the rush finally gets to him. So, a couple of spots there to really kind of keep your eye on as the game gets underway and unwinds.
Absolutely. Score prediction?
This is probably because I'm selfish and I don't want Kansas City to win 3 in a row, which I'm trying to figure out a way to justify that. I do have a ton of respect for Andy Reid. He's always been one of my favorite coaches. Steve Spagnuolo is a guy I've gotten to know. I'd be happy for him. I'm trying to find the reasons to celebrate 3 in a row.
Right.
But it takes away from what we accomplished in Dallas when we became the first team to win 3 in 4 years.
Sure.
Now, the Patriots have matched that, but we were still the first team to do that, and we still have that moniker. So we've gone from Pittsburgh, 4 Super Bowls in 6 years in the 70s, Dallas, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years in the 90s, the Patriots, 3 Super Bowls in 4 years in the late 2010, and now here we go on it with a chance for history with 3 in a row with the Kansas City Chiefs. But you made a great point. Patrick Mahomes with the ball in his hand at the end of the game with a chance to win. I'm going to go with Philadelphia winning by 10 because I think the emphasis, if I'm a part of that organization, is we have to push this out to a 2-possession game as quick as we can.
Yeah.
And then we've got to maintain that all the way through the game. We cannot let it become a 1-possession game because that's where this team thrives at the end of the game. So how can we get it there? And does that impact some of the decision-making that Nick Sirianni makes? Because he starts to maybe do things that are a little bit more aggressive, or maybe even a little bit, you get into that red zone fringe, and it's 4th and 2, and instead of going for it and maybe getting stuffed, do you take the field goal at that point because it does create another 2-possession game for you? So I'm interested to see how the decision-making is and kind of staying in that area, because I don't think any Philadelphia Eagles fan wants to see the game, inside a 1-possession score. And it doesn't matter how much time is left on the clock, right? It could be 12 seconds. It could be 1 minute and 12 seconds. I mean, this guy is amazing what he's been able to do through his career. No Eagle fan is going to feel comfortable with Patrick Mahomes with the football in his hand in a 1-possession game late. And
100%.
so, do everything you can to make that a 2-possession.
Final question here. Where do I get that jacket, man? Very fashionable Daryl Johnston today. Absolutely love it.
What is this one? This is
it's a little Holland and Sherry there.
Yeah. This one is from Stanley Korshak in Dallas, Texas.
Very good. I have to give him a visit there.
Yeah. Salvatore. Salvatore is my guy.
Daryl Johnston, Cowboys legend, Executive Vice President of Football Operations for the UFL, which kicks off on Fox in March. So, Daryl, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely.
Enjoy the rest of your week.
I will. You as well. I think you're on the plane back to Dallas later today, so enjoy that, my friend.
You.
And until next time, guys, peace out.